Good morning, everyone. Today we have the unique honor of hanging out with Bruce Kulick, which, to give you a little bit of the background as to how I found about Bruce, 15 years old, I just started learning guitar, and I got a subscription to Guitar World, and I was not a Kiss fan before that, before I started playing guitar. That's kind of what made me a Kiss fan, but Bruce was all over Guitar World magazine, people dropping his name as an influence. Today I get to talk to him about how that all came to be. Bruce, how did you get into music? What was the bug that bit you?
Well, definitely the Beatles. When they came to America to do Ed Sullivan, and many people in the industry talk about this, how incredibly influential that was, and how I just knew what I wanted to try at least. And I'll be quite honest, guitar became my friend, and it was quite natural for me. You know, it's the innate ability, okay? And from there, the British invasion happened with all these amazing bands, from Hendrix, who was American who made it in England, but The Who, Led Zeppelin, Cream. These were my big influences, which really did help me. It was a good timing in my life.
And where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and my brother Bob, who's almost 4 years older than me, actually, that was a great opportunity for me to be exposed, the older brother turning on the younger brother, to things. And he of course had a successful music career. So, but a lot of those things came into the house maybe a little earlier. I remember when we listened to Dylan, and my father would be screaming at my brother, like, turn that crap off. You know what I mean? And this is pre-Beatles,
yeah.
Dylan, and I get it. But as soon as the Beatles, really landed in America and took over the world, my life changed, and all the, kind of like, it changed culture. It changed from, not only hairstyles and clothing and the music, and there was a bit of a political movement with it too, in a sense, and I grew up in the 60s. So it was really quite fascinating to be part of that. I loved what year I was born, shall I say.
Do you think that being in a bigger city at that time, do you think it kind of facilitated that kind of a movement, or as opposed to maybe being born in middle America? Or do you think it was accepted in Brooklyn to, when the Beatles came out, was it cool, or was it like you had to hide it from your parents?
Oh, definitely didn't have to hide it. Although the long hair was always an issue. My brother got in trouble being, the pioneer of who's going to get, caught with, like, don't do that. You can't grow your hair and everything. And I remember, I think my parents punished me and wouldn't give me my allowance because I didn't want to cut my hair. So I got a job. I had a part-time job. But I do absolutely believe in the 60s, when all this happened, being in New York was an advantage. Every band played there. I saw everybody from, Hendrix to Cream, Led Zeppelin. My brother saw the Beatles.
How old was you when you saw your first show?
So I saw a pretty good one. I was 13. Murray Decay came from Brooklyn, and you should look him up. He's fascinating because he was the fifth Beatle, because he showed the Beatles around. But he had a very successful show, mostly showing pop and R&B artists. Okay, and he had a theater in Brooklyn that I always knew about. In fact, there's records out there of that. He used to sell records too, Murray Decay. But he was just a DJ that was popular, and then he did that. But he moved it to New York, which was very unusual, and they would do matinees. Like, remember when the Beatles used to start, that was very popular in England too. All these bands.
Interesting,
on the bill,
right?
And you're not going to believe this, Bill. So I went to see the Young Rascals, okay, because they were popular with Good Lovin' and everything.
Absolutely.
Right? And the opening acts were The Who and Cream.
Whoa.
That was 1966. And I got to tell that story to Jack Bruce when I got a chance years later to jam with him when I was a counselor at a rock and roll fantasy camp. We hit it off, and what a dream for me to jam with him doing the two Cream songs, and we're improvising. I watched the video that night in my hotel room, and I cried.
That's
I
so
was just
cool.
so excited. So I knew I saw something magic when, I was excited to see.
Were you already playing guitar before you went to that show, or did this inspire you to learn after?
No, I was playing already. Yeah,
okay.
Because as soon as, I believe I was playing 66. No, I was playing before that. Yes. I started, like, the Beatles came February 64. So I was playing. I picked up the guitar that week, you know.
What was the first song
And,
you could play?
Yeah, I could play. I learned my C and F chords fairly quickly, and I literally put a hole in the acoustic. It was a cheaper, like nylon string acoustic that my brother had, to Glad All Over. You say that you love me, C, C, F, F, C, C, F, F, and there you go.
And did you feel like a rock star?
Oh, absolutely. Although I have to be honest, you know, for me, I dreamt about being successful and being in a band, but I didn't have the drive purely for that. The passion for music and the way I played guitar and how much it meant to me, that's what was the driving force. And even in college, when everyone, before college, high school, and everyone was like, so what are you going to do? Did you apply for? And I was kind of clueless, but a lot of very close friends just said to me, quite honestly, you have to be a musician. I mean, you're talented. Just do music. And I was like, okay. So, you know, I enrolled in Queens College, the music program. They accepted me. I went for like almost 2 years. And then I got the real life experience, if you know what I'm saying, because I would have continued with it, but some opportunities started to happen.
What happened?
You know? My cover group, who was now at 75, that was a disco-ish band, is suddenly backing up a star. Okay.
Who was the star?
Oh, yeah, you'll laugh. So my first professional gig, because I did some decent gigs before that with my high school band and everything. You know, you play on the ferry that goes around the on the tugboat.
Yeah, basically a cruise ship gig before it was cruise ship.
A circle line, you know. Yeah. And sometimes I originally played bass, and then I started to play guitar. And I have that guitar here to show you.
Oh, cool.
But suddenly George McRae was managed by the guy who was our agent, booking us in discos, you know. And oddly enough, he had a huge hit with Rock Your Baby, okay. The guy was under TK and the Sunshine Band. He used to write songs, and apparently he worked at the studio where they were recording. So that band was very, very popular, and then he said, here, you do this song, you know. So George McRae became a big star, and now I'm going off to do gigs with him, you know, and I'm going to Europe and touring with him. And that was the first time I really got to find out what it was like to be a professional musician and be on tour and perform, and from small places to huge places.
Did you like that lifestyle? The different places every day?
It was exciting. I was never brought up with a big travel bug, you know. I mean, it was to go upstate to the Catskills, which was my parents' summer, jaunt, was always like a nightmare to pack up and do.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I remember I was happy when I was old enough, and I said, just go, leave me here. You know what I mean? And I could just chill in Queens. That's when we were living in Queens. But honestly, I did find it fascinating, but I struggled with it at times because, and don't laugh, but Paul Stanley's talked about it too. So there I am eating things I've never eaten. Oh, that looks like my mother's, chicken cutlet. You know what I mean? I'm someplace in Germany. I don't know. It's pork. You know what I mean? It's a schnitzel.
Oh, yeah.
And so I eat it, and then I'm like, I don't feel good. You know what I mean? Because
yeah, of course.
So I was exposed to some things that actually were pretty crazy for me. So some of my memories are the excitement of traveling around Germany, seeing Mercedes-Benz and the Autobahn, and all the history with Germany, which in 75 is different than now, But it was all very fascinating to me. But it's just funny how the food was a challenge. I did love the people, and they love musicians. No matter where you go, musicians are treated like royalty. So I did it like that.
Did you feel a creative outlet being in this, or did it feel like a job because you were doing someone else's songs? And
always creative. Because all of a sudden, some guy, and this is a funny story, some guy owned a studio. Maybe he was a producer. This is so long ago. I'm trying to piece it together. I played it for my wife, Lisa, not long ago. So I digitized everything I kept, okay? And you're gonna laugh. The bass player was black and very talented, okay? Dave Murray is the name. We had a great band back in George, and the studio guy was like, come into my studio, record, just jam, do what you want. So I had some ideas, all of a sudden we're recording, right? And it's so funny because one of the pieces, I remember, Dave had this funky bass line to my kind of, chukka chukka kind of guitar. Again, we were doing kind of, it wasn't rock, okay?
Yeah.
It was, anyway, he winds up working with David Bowie. And I know he didn't get credited, but he played on Stay, which had the same boom, 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 boom. God,
same
boom,
style
boom,
that you guys
boom,
were.
And that was the freaking jam that we did.
Wow.
And I wouldn't be surprised. And I wasn't really there with Murray at the studio to see what he did with David, but I loved it. And when I heard it, I was like, yeah, right on. I didn't go like, I have to go claim that, because it was like a groove. It wasn't, although, nowadays with sampling and stuff like that, people take things. I'm pointing to my Kanye West record over there.
That's true.
I mean? Yeah. People do sample 70s stuff and then release it, and they, kind of use it. But yeah, that was, so to answer your question, of course I was creative.
That's great.
I mean, because the gig was the gig. By the way, we would open up with a half hour of jamming anyway. Oh. And then he'd come out and play.
Now, how did that gig end? Where did you go from there? Did you end up ever having to get a different type of job, or did you always get to be a musician?
Always got to be a musician. It was fascinating. And one other funny story about George McCrae, and I never get to tell these stories. So you're getting.
Oh, please!
You're getting the cool
please.
Stuff. So George's album took off in Germany, and Germany has like what America has, which is the Grammys. Okay, they call it the you'll laugh. It's something like the Bronze Lion in Germany.
Yeah.
We were going to appear along with, what a Grammy's like. There's 50 artists, and he had a label person, a representative. So he brings the band there. We're going to play. The chart was written. We just have to play what we know. But an orchestra guy has a chart for Rock Your Baby to perform with a choir, full orchestra, horn section, you know what I mean? And we're just popping in. Keyboards, guitar, me, bass, drums, right? So all of a sudden, that guy obviously should tell you when you're going on, like any professional run show. We're just like, do backstage. I swear I'm taking a piss. When all of a sudden, you're on! You know what I mean? And I'm like, wow. They already announced him. He walked out on stage already, on the tape, and they played it on the radio the next day, so I was able to get a cassette copy of it. Right?
Nice.
and you can hear, George McCrae, I mean, and they hear boom, 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 the big percussive rhythm section starts up, right? But you don't hear anything else. And he comes out and he realizes his band's not there. It's in an arena, so that could take some time.
Absolutely.
So we rush out there. You hear like the crowd go like, oh, because all of a sudden the only thing he can do is a little bit of, oh, he does his little like, but they realize, the crowd goes like, what's going on here? Why didn't they start the song? You will actually hear me go, plug in,
wow.
2, 3, 4, dun, 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 and we go into the song.
I wonder why it was so disorganized in that.
Whoever is responsible for the band, didn't know we were up next. Professionally run shows, usually the next thing is already you're
absolutely
you're
in the wings.
Dugout, you're right there in the wings, and we weren't. But that's trial by fire. That's what happens when you're on the road, which is why there was nothing in my later years with Meat Loaf and Kiss that completely shocked me. Yeah, I was like, oh, what happened to the lights, or like other snafus?
Yeah.
We can't find the stage. Spinal Tap.
The show must go on.
Yeah, the show has to go on, and you're going to see a lot of permutations. But I learned pretty young. It was a real trial by fire. But how exciting it is, I actually have that recording, I still have the recording of me in the German studio jamming songs that one actually became an element in a very, very loved David Bowie song. So if you ask me what I thought of that German trip, it was amazing. And later I could show you some photos taken from that tour that I have here in the house. Absolutely.
So when did you move on from George?
Right.
And how did that happen?
All right, so George ends, but the manager, the same guy, he was a colorful guy. He got Gwen, his wife Gwen McCrae was also an artist. So I remember doing some shows with her. She had like rocking chair or something. I don't know. That was crazy.
That's all part of being a musician.
Yes,
was picking up those gigs along the way.
We were suddenly on a plane and we were learning the songs. Some of those artists only had to do like 20 minutes, And I remember learning the songs like quickly like that. And then that was the first time I ever saw an artist that like oh, she wears a wig, because I saw her at the hotel without the hair. I was like, who is that?
Yeah.
Thought it could have been part of the cleaning crew. I hate to say it, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
It turned out to be her. Anyway, she was very grateful to the band. We were terrific, and that was a big gig at a huge racetrack or something. But then that guy gets Andrea True. More. It's very funny how, especially Andrea True's song really had a lot of life, okay? Sex and the City, they used it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's come back.
Now, here's a porn star who starts dating a very talented producer, this guy, Diamond. I think it was Doug Diamond. I'm not sure his first name, but that guy wrote hit songs for people, and all of a sudden he's with her, and she goes, here, you sing this. That's the way all these artists come out of nowhere. And the next thing you know, she's got a hit record, right? She's probably better with the porn, okay, than she is as a performer, but she has a hit record, right? And she had the drive. She gravitated to me very much. I was kind of like her chaperone, okay? I'll never forget, and you'll love this one. I had to go pick her up because she asked me to accompany her to some premiere thing. Of course, it was with one of her other kind of movies.
Right.
And she used to keep it very separate. She didn't really want those worlds to collide, but she didn't want. She just
Before
asked me.
internet, you could probably.
Exactly. But there I go. When I picked her up, across the street, Andy Warhol was standing there.
No kidding.
And even then, I knew that was like, whoa, that's pretty big, yeah. Because she lived at a brownstone in Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan. Anyway, when we went to the premiere, which was called like Meatballs, okay, and I don't mean like the Italian dish. And I sat there and watched, and some people that were invited to that thing, they knew she was there, so they're all acting creepy, but I was the 6'3" guitar player that she felt like, well, nobody will mess with me here.
Yeah.
I don't even know if my wife knew that story.
That's got to be a weird feeling then going out and performing with her and
Yes.
almost trying to treat it like it didn't exist.
Yeah, it was hard to put that behind me. She used to, I didn't know what Xanax was, but she took, would sleep in the back of the car, just get crashed out, and we'd go drive around and do the gigs. Most of the time, it went over well because she had a great band surrounding her.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we did go over to Europe. We played it. She had a hit record in Italy, so suddenly we were playing 2 weeks in Italy, which is a lot of fun, I got to admit. And I'm still friends with some of the band members from then. I ran into the trumpet player when Graham Funk plays Atlantic City. All of a sudden, he's like, Bruce, it's Mark. I'm like, whoa, and he was like one of the guys that works at the casino. It was weird, and I'm still very, very good friends with the sax player, Kenny, who lives in China. Everyone moves on, but really great, all that's fascinating. So all those disco top 40 bands ran into each other. George McCrae gets American dates. My brother had a lull in his busy career. All of a sudden, Bob's playing with me, and we're playing the Chitlin circuit. Oh boy. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, and everybody else is black in the band except for Bob and I. And I'll never forget, there I am at a club somewhere in the South. By the way, really iconic clubs. They were a thrill. Obviously, I was a little nervous, but the photos on the wall, B.B. King and all the other songs.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But how about, a guy in the front row who's obviously probably holding a firearm saying, like, you boys better be good.
Yeah.
Now, we were
And whose
good.
definition of good?
Well, but we were good. Okay,
Yeah.
We're covering Jeff Beck instrumentals and setting I have tapes of all that stuff too. We were great. It was a great band, and George would come out and do his half hour maybe. You know what I mean? But from that, I remember I was tired of any kind of gigs like that. I wanted to play rock and roll.
Right.
I grew up with rock and roll. Why did I get those gigs, which very few of my Kiss fans even know about? Well, it's because it was a job. It was a gig.
That's how people get their foot in the door.
Yes, and I'm also versatile enough that doing that really, I really think that some of those things also was the bridge to having other gigs, like not the Kiss gig, but certainly like a Grand Funk Railroad, who was more R&B in some ways, than a Kiss. And of course, when I worked with Michael Bolton is how I met them. But really, if you want to go chronologically, from there, Meatloaf was the next thing. And my brother always had the inside scoop as to who was,
That's a
looking
huge
for,
record.
Yes. And there they were. They struggled, Jim Steinman and Meatloaf. How do we do this? How do we get a record deal? What is going to happen? but they got one guy to believe in them because everybody passed. You know, the story is that I know there's a lot of great press and movies and documentaries about them. It's all true. I mean, they're not every detail I remember the same way sometimes, but the point is, Jim had a theme of what he, you know, vision really, and it's brilliant. You know, Jim's one of those genius songwriters, and certainly Meat Loaf was the vessel of.
I would say the perfect character to pull it off too.
So the two of them realized they wanted to be Springsteen meets like a kind of some sort of a rock horror thing in a way, and his connection to the Rocky Horror Picture Show and all. So I got to be honest. Bob first, when he met them, they loved him. Okay, and then I auditioned too, and I was really shy. I mean, again, I knew what I had to do with George McRae and Andrew True and all that, and only for a short period was my brother with me for George. Okay. But,
did you and Bob get along when you were in a band together?
Yeah, I mean, well, what happened was Bob definitely had that vision that since Meat Loaf wanted two lead guitar players, and I know where he got that from. Lou Reed had, you know, Dick Wagner and Steve Hunter, who did that Transformer album.
Yeah,
very famous.
I love that album.
And the two guitar players are just, even though Lou came up various times in our lives too, my brother and I, because he wound up showing up at a George McRae gig. And he said, "Lou's the horn players," he tells George. and then we meet, you know, Bob meets him years later and records the Coney Island Baby with him.
Yeah.
You know, at a studio. He just said, "Oh, come on in, play guitar." And I'll never forget Lou Reed once calling the house because my brother might not have had the apartment yet in Manhattan. And he goes, Is your brother? You know, and I'm like, "No, he's not here right now. Who's this?" It's Lou. I go, "Oh, hi Lou, it's Bruce." You know. "Okay, tell your brother to call me," and then I go, "Okay, no problem, I'll take care of it," and I hang up, and then immediately the phone rings again. Do not give that number to anybody. You know what I mean?
Wow.
He was like, you know, really paranoid.
Yeah.
You know, but anyway, back then, you know, we didn't have all the electronics we have now with communicating. So ultimately, I think the Meat Loaf people weren't so sure about me, and Bob
really
put their foot down, which I was, of course, always grateful with. They realized once we were doing the work and we were on tour, I was the right guy.
What did they? Was your role? Were you going to be trading off solos, just
Yes.
soloing together, and they weren't sure
But
what they were looking for?
I don't think I came off very confident, and Bob always had a very large presence. Okay?
Right.
And Bob knew that he didn't do that favor to me and them only for him. He knew I would learn the Todd Rundgren guitar parts that needed to be done.
Yeah.
Okay. Because my brother wasn't that kind of a player. He was more this very strong player, but he had to do it more his way. Where I know they wanted the Todd Rundgren guitar parts.
Exactly. That's what the
Yeah.
fans are hearing on
Yeah.
the singles and
Right.
stuff.
So if you listen to, it's hard to find digital, but it is out there on YouTube. And there were many CDs that were remastered that years later came out. Had two live tracks from Nassau Coliseum. One's called like Great Balls of Fire, Bolero, which was the intro of every Meat Loaf's tour, a gig from that era. And then we go right into Bat Out of Hell. So I'm on the left, my brother's on the right. It's a terrific recording. And then when the big solo comes up, it's me. But Bob does a lot of the sound effects and the other riffs in the verses, and then we do harmony parts, you know. So Bob did the right thing for the gig, for me, for them. Okay.
Right, and that's the main thing is
Yes.
what the fans are seeing is what you're really trying to paint the picture of.
You know, exactly.
Did this fulfill your need for rock? Was this close enough to what you were
Yes.
looking for?
It was, but it was probably the hardest gig I ever had. There was just something about Meat Loaf being so bigger than life or something, you know, and we went from nothing to, you know, him becoming huge.
So that happened as you were on tour.
Yes.
It just kept getting bigger and bigger.
Yes, and then we started off practically getting booed off the stage, opening for Cheap Trick in Chicago, and they didn't get it, they didn't like it, they didn't understand it. And I know there's a lot of different stories about that, but I know what happened, you know, and I remember they warmed up a little bit, but it wasn't a good start.
It wasn't what they were expecting.
Right. And then what happened was we did the CBS convention down in New Orleans. I remember that was like, woohoo! You know, a record company convention's pretty wild.
Yeah.
We're all in the gift shop charging things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I can get a lighter. I can get this. I can get, you know, it was silly. But we performed. Billy Joel was there and other big CBS artists. Okay. And what they saw us play, and I have photos from that event, and that was it. They just threw the giant money bag out there, which means radio promotion, you know, the big publicity machine steps in. Now, the way the record business worked back then, if you had that opportunity, that was golden. But it still didn't mean that you were going to make it.
Absolutely.
But if the reaction is what they are hoping for, it will happen.
Yeah.
It will happen big. And that's exactly what happened. So in other words, whatever that first song was, which I'm not really certain what was the first hit, but it took off on the radio. And then we didn't have to open for Cheap Trick. And we love those guys, but you know what I mean? Now we're playing large theaters, selling out immediately because they know the song. And let's face it, when you talk about a gimmick, you know, what do you got?
Yeah.
And a funny thing about that, when we played a pretty good venue in New York, I think it was like the Palladium or something, which was sold out. Bob already worked, you know, he knew Paul Stanley and all, you know, and Paul came to the gig and he hated it. He left.
Really?
It just wasn't his thing. I think him seeing a 300-pound singer in a tuxedo wasn't rock and roll.
Right.
Meanwhile, there we were touring and very successfully, and we played a gigantic stadium with ELO up in Canada. That was amazing. When ELO had the spaceship stage.
Yeah.
It was. We were on Saturday Night Live. Okay. But the dynamics in the band were really stressful because I need to explain me telling you how hard it was.
Yeah.
The dynamics between my brother and I and my brother and everybody else was very hard too. And Meatloaf was out of control. He was, I didn't even understand it, but he was definitely on probably cocaine and out of his mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Understandably though, and I say that, I'm not saying he was violent or vicious.
Who could
He was
know?
like a big baby.
Who could know what it's like
Right.
to, I mean, well, you can.
Yeah.
I mean, to be thinking you're going to do a tour of just opening for another band, and then next thing you know, you are the focus selling out theaters.
Yes.
That's got to be an amazing boost to your ego if you're not ready for it.
I mean, there we are doing a sound check, and Meatloaf, something with the monitor, something went down, and then next thing you know, there's words between him and my brother. My brother was ready to take off the BC Rich, which is a very angular-looking guitar,
Right.
in shape, and I walked off the stage. I couldn't take it. Okay.
You just
and
saw.
I remember one of the guys that worked for the band who was like, I think it was this publisher guy who used to travel with us because there was a lot of money here going on.
Oh yeah.
You know, the selling out and the big record sales. It's at over 40 million worldwide. And he said to me, you know, Bruce, don't take that. I thought, why does it have to be like this? I mean, we just want to, you know, play guitar. I just want to play my guitar.
Yeah, you're just entertaining people.
I don't want to see, you know, practically violence between people on the stage for a sound check, you know. And then there was the fun stuff. You go backstage, and I love Oreo cookies like any, you know, healthy human being. And Bob and I are looking for the cookies, and we just see the empty bag. You know, like, what happened? You know, meat, you know. Where are the cookies? I don't know. And you see his teeth are black. He ate the whole bag.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that was going on, you know. And you know, Carla DeVito was the singer, and she had to do that whole kissing thing with Paradise by the Dashboard Light. But I'm really proud of everything we did. But it was hard. But that band was amazing, and I really regret the fact that the band didn't get the chance to like kind of do it again.
Right, or on a next record kind of deal.
Right.
Yeah,
Then he got sick and everything went crazy, and Jim and him. But God bless Meatloaf. He's been so sweet to me, and I love him. Someone actually booked, a guy that's a friend of mine, booked a cameo from him. Okay.
Oh, really?
And you know, I do cameos, and even if one of mine's long and it's 6 or 7 minutes, that's great.
Yeah.
But 45 minutes. He just sat there and
Whoa.
talked to me, and everything. He's telling stories. And it was really remarkable, and I felt like I caught up with him without actually being in the same room as him, you know.
Well, my friends, I hope you enjoyed the end of part 1 of our vlog with Bruce. Bruce had so many great stories that I just had to make it 2 vlogs. Come back and we will talk about the Kiss years and how he was involved with Michael Bolton. You guys won't want to miss this. Thank you all for watching. We'll catch you all next time. Goodbye.